Israel is a country that imposes segregated roads for Jews and Arabs. This map shows how Palestinians are forced through checkpoints.
Well, we all saw this coming. The Hill has fired yet another commentator that has been critical of the Israeli government. So, Briahna Joy Gray has announced on Twitter that she has been terminated from her hosting position at The Hill's show Rising, which is a daily show. And it's pretty clear as to why. Now, in this video, I'm going to get to an example of Briahna Joy Gray's recent work on The Hill, as well as maybe what triggered the termination now. So first off, the announcement that she put on Twitter here saying it finally happened. The Hill has fired me. There should be no doubt that The Hill Rising has a clear pattern of suppressing speech, particularly when it's critical of the state of Israel. This is why they fired Katie Halper, and it was only a matter of time before they fired me. And she shares her or the termination letter here as well. Now, just to be clear on the Katie Halper part, Katie Halper, again, another critical commentator of Israel, or commentator critical of Israel, was fired back in 2022. This headline from Jacobin: left-wing journalist Katie Halper has been fired for calling Israel an apartheid state, which it very clearly is. The Hill has fired Katie Halper from its morning show Rising for describing Israel's policies as tantamount to apartheid. It's a blatant act of censorship to silence a pro-Palestinian journalist. Just worth mentioning here, Human Rights Watch, other human rights organizations like B'Tselem in Israel, Amnesty International, have all described Israel's policies as apartheid. So it's not like Katie Halper was just, espousing on something she has nothing that she doesn't know about. No, this is directly in correlation with human rights organizations that have also said the exact same thing. And again, this is long before, October 7th. Now, Briahna Joy Gray also went on to say, I'll have more to say about this, about how this was clearly part of a coordinated effort on her podcast, Bad Faith. And this this part is my speculation. I don't know if it's connected to it, but I recently covered this week how the Israeli government was caught secretly targeting American lawmakers with an influence campaign, as Haaretz writes here, an attempt to sway global public opinion on the war in Gaza. Fake accounts and sites spread pro-Israel and Islamophobic content. The operation was orchestrated by Israel's Diaspora Affairs Ministry and run by a political campaigning firm. So this was also reported on by the New York Times. Again, I covered this a couple days ago. I'll link to that video in case you missed it. But it's possible that, so these fake accounts still exist on Twitter. And there has been a lot of hatred thrown at Briahna Joy Gray, especially over the past week. Now, those may be some fake accounts. It may be real people. I don't know. But it's not hard to believe that because these accounts still exist on Twitter while they were deleted off of, or by Facebook on their social media pages, because they still exist on Twitter, it isn't crazy to imagine that they're using this to target people who are critical of Israel on various sites like The Hill as well. Now, also, just to be clear, so her co-host Robbie, who is a libertarian, he's a right-winger. I think he's terrible, but she defends him here, saying, to be clear, Robbie did not know, has objected, and shouldn't be blamed. And Craig McIver, who used to work at the UN, recently resigned, is now describes himself as just a human rights lawyer and justice campaigner, global citizen. Replies saying, the fact that so many vile racist and genocide apologists are celebrating your departure is proof of your important impact. The Hill is the loser here. I know your critical, courageous, principled voice will continue to inform, inspire, and speak truth to power. See you at Bad Faith. So this gets to, I'm just going to show a couple examples, because the replies to this initial tweet of the announcement, there's over 7,500 replies. A lot of them are absolutely disgusting. Like this one here. She writes, not going to platform these people except to point out that this is the tone of the average Zionist in my mention. Blatant racism. Fundamentally, their approach in Gaza is contingent on racial supremacist arguments, so it's not surprising. I'm going to avoid saying some words here, but this person replied to her saying, just letting you know, if you and your family were all slaughtered, the people of Gaza would celebrate your deaths. Keep rolling your eyes. You unemployed now. Remember this, Palestinians effed around and they're finding out. You did the same, you effed around and you found out. This is very much in line with a lot of the replies that she is receiving on her tweets, and even before she was fired. Like this example, uh, tweeting out here: "Why are wheelchair users catching a stray? Are these Zionists trying to make themselves deeply unlikable?" Somebody replied to her with this: "DEI Barbie is one of the phrases that has, especially over the past week or so, been used against Briahna Joy Gray to attack her. It's just gross, and it really showcases the mindset of the people who are happy about her firing." Now, let me show you a clip of some of the great work that she has done in her critique of Israel. I also want to be clear here as well. I think it's, I mean, if you've watched me long enough, there are topics where I disagree with Briahna Joy Gray on, and I've not hidden that. I think it's fine to have political disagreements. I think it's also important to acknowledge when someone does fantastic work. So, despite those disagreements that I may have had, or I may have still with Briahna Joy Gray on various issues, that doesn't mean that her work here should be dismissed. So, this is an example of one of her radars, as they're called. My last two radars have been the most popular videos on that The Hill has put out recently. Both are critical of the plausible genocide being committed by Israel.
It's a deeply segregated society in Israel where 98% of Jews say all or most of their friends are Jewish and 85% of Muslims say the same. I don't think you'll hear Mar speak up for Palestinian Christians either. Remember, former Congressman Justin Amash lost several relatives when Israel bombed a Christian Orthodox church in Gaza, where people had been sheltering along with sleeping children and babies. 150 to 200 people were killed in that attack by Israel. Israel is a country that imposes segregated roads for Jews and Arabs. This map shows how Palestinians are forced through checkpoints, where they're forced to wait for hours and are subjugated to humiliating treatment. As one Palestinian doctor explained, "My family members cross this checkpoint at 4 a.m., then sleep in their car until they start work at 8 a.m. This is apartheid."
All right, so that was just 1 minute of a 20-minute segment, but it gives you an idea of the kind of criticisms that Briahna Joy Gray has been lobbing at the Israeli government, the accurate criticisms. Now, this is what a lot of her haters, I guess, for lack of a better term here, are quoting to try and claim that this is why she deserved to be fired. So I'm going to cut out the person's name here. I also have to, unfortunately, dance around the main topic of discussion here because it's on YouTube, and YouTube is known to pull down videos discussing certain sensitive topics, but you can see the word on screen. You'll know what I'm talking about. But this was shared saying, "How can any reputable media outlet retain you when you roll your eyes at a woman pleading with you to believe," phrase I can't say, "victims from October 7th? You did this on their network under their branding. Of course you were fired." I'm going to show you this clip, and then I'm going to show you or give you greater context around this.
Thank you. Me too. And I really hope that you specifically will believe women when they say that they got hurt.
All right. Thanks for joining. Stick around. More Rising coming up next.
All right. So, Briahna Joy Gray rolled her eyes while this sister of a hostage victim was discussing you should believe women. Let's first just discuss this aspect briefly here. This has been disputed by the New York Times itself, which were the initial reporters about this topic. That doesn't mean it didn't happen. Of course it may have happened. But in terms of the actual reporting about this, it has been disputed. As Vanity Fair writes here, The Intercept reported that the Times had planned to air an episode of The Daily weeks earlier. The Daily is their podcast that was based on a December Times investigation led by Pulitzer Prize winner Jeffrey Gettleman and co-authored by freelancers Annette Schwartz and Adam Sella about how Hamas weaponized that in the October attack on Israel. But the paper shelved that episode amid a furious internal debate about the strength of the paper's original reporting on the subject. The New York Times realized, and there's a deeper piece on this in The Intercept about Annette Schwartz, and essentially the things that were made up for the initial piece from December, that the New York Times then realized there's not much to any of this. So that goes to directly why Briahna Joy Gray had this kind of reaction. Not to mention, in addition to this, this is a clip out of context. Right before this was a long discussion where, look, I'm not going to disparage this guest because their sister's a victim, but they have clearly been fed a lot of propaganda, and just as many people living in Israel have for years, that they unfortunately have fallen under and believe. And a lot of that propaganda was being spread during this episode. Let me show you just the moment that happened right before.
If the world won't help us, we will see 9/11 the second time in the US as well. Because we can already see in the United States, in Michigan, rallies that's calling death to America, not condemning terror organizations in Israel or any other place. In fact, is reflecting to your country as well.
I'm just going to push back against the implication that in Michigan, which has the largest Muslim and Arab population in America, that there is any threat of terrorism from our own people. And I would like to clarify also that one of the rationale that was presented for 9/11 was discussed with America's support of Israel's continued occupation of Palestine. So that's neither here nor there. I really do hope that Netanyahu agrees and Israel agrees to the ceasefire deal that could bring all the hostages, including your sister, home. And I'm sure many people watching are praying for her safety.
That was the clip directly before the one that is being cut and shared on social media. This guest fear-mongered Arabs living in Michigan, as if that's going to bring about a 9/11 too. And again, this is the end of a longer discussion where Briahna Joy Gray had to sit through a lot of propaganda being thrown at her. So I can totally understand somebody at the end of that conversation getting annoyed at just how much she had to listen to that has been disputed again and again and again. And again, recognizing, I'm glad Briahna Joy Gray recognized at the end there, Netanyahu is the barrier to the hostages coming home. He is the one that has not agreed to a ceasefire. Over and over again, leadership in Gaza has agreed to a ceasefire. It has been Netanyahu, Israeli prime minister, that has not agreed to it. A couple last things here, just some comments from Twitter. My buddy Mike Figueredo tweeting out, compare that number of leftist hosts The Hill Rising has fired to the number of right-wing hosts they fired. That gives you a clue as to who's actually challenging power. As far as I know, The Hill has never fired a single right-wing host. So going to his point, it's very clear the kind of voices that are being silenced. And last tweet here from Crystal Ball says, yet another person fired for daring to support Palestinian humanity. I have no doubt Briahna Joy Gray will continue to find great success outside of corporate media, but these attempts to silence pro-Palestine voices are meant to intimidate those who don't have Brie's fortitude and ability to withstand the attacks. And that really is, like, I am very curious to see who The Hill is going to hire as their left-wing voice. Because they're running out of people. And are they going to bring someone back on who's going to continue being critical of the Israeli government? I guess we'll have to wait and see.